Example 3, we're going to convert. They want me to convert to polar form. So you've got to remember polar form is r cis theta. I want r and theta. And so my formulas are r equals square root of x squared plus y squared, and tangent theta equals y over x. If you don't have those memorized, that's fine, but you need them in front of you until you do have them memorized, okay? So it's important to notice they've given me rectangular form, but rectangular form is x plus y. Oh my gosh. X plus yi. And so your y is your coefficient for the I term, and people don't see it, but there's a 1 there, correct? There's a 1 in front of the I. So that's x is negative square root of 3, y is 1. Does everybody see why y is 1 there? Okay, so when I do this formula, r equals square root of x squared, that's going to be negative square root of 3 squared, plus y is 1, so 1 squared. Square root of 3 squared is just going to be 3. A negative squared is going to be positive, so you're going to have the square root of 3, and 1 squared is 1. That's the square root of 4, so r equals 2. R equals 2. It will not always be a nice number like that. You might have to simplify a radical. Tangent theta equals y over x. Y is 1. X is negative square root of 3. To solve this equation, we're going to have to do an inverse tangent, and that's where your calculator comes in. We are going to do an inverse tangent 1 over negative square root of 3. Close it, close it. Your calculator will say negative 30, assuming you're in degrees. Negative 30 is not the answer, though. Because you have to think about the quadrant, okay? You have to think about the quadrant. So when they say x, remember, this is x plus y, I. X is negative, y is positive. That puts me in the second quadrant. So what you have to do is think about a 30-degree angle in the second quadrant. The negative just talks about the second quadrant. The negative doesn't really mean anything to me other than it tells me where to go. But that's a 30-degree angle in the second quadrant, and this is how you draw that. It always starts with the x-axis, and so you're 30 away from the x-axis in the second quadrant. Remember, this was 180. Halfway around was 180. So really what we have is 30 before 180. Or in other words, what is that number? Thank you, 150. And there's your answer. 2 cis 150. If I graphed negative square root of 3 plus 1i, it would put me in the second quadrant. If I graphed 2 cis 150, it would put me in the exact same place. It's the same thing. I just took a vector in one form and changed it into a vector in another form. It's just like Celsius and Fahrenheit. It's just two different ways of talking about the same thing. Now, the next one, negative 3i to polar form. You would want to think about this as x plus yi. And you'd be like, okay, well, there's no x, so I'm just going to call that 0. 0 minus 3i. Okay. Now, we want polar form, and polar form, we want r cis theta. So for polar form, it's the same question, right? We want r, we want theta. So we've got two formulas. R equals square root of x squared plus y squared. As soon as you feel comfortable with that formula, quit writing it down and skip that step. I know that x is 0, And the y term is negative 3. That's going to be 0 plus 9. Square root of 9 is 3. R equals 3. The r, or the radius, is 3. Now for my angle. Tangent theta equals y over x. In this case, tangent theta equals negative 3 over 0. Uh-oh. Negative 3 over 0 is undefined, right? You're going to get an error on your calculator, okay? You're definitely going to get an error. It's not going to work right, but that's okay because all we really need to do is picture where this is, okay? And I can picture where this is. You wouldn't say what quadrant it's in, but think about it this way. If you had to graph the vector 0 minus 3i, you're just going down 3. You go over 0 and down 3, right? That's your vector. That's where that is. So what I'm after here is, what is that angle? And so we start at 0, and up is 90, and over here is 180, and down here is, anybody remember? 270. That angle is 270, and we can see it without the formula. Theta equals 270. So my answer for this one is 3 cis 270. Four and 5, I'm going to change the problems a little bit. Okay, I don't like that angle of 115. So I'm going to change the angle to 120, basically. So change this to 120, and this would have to match, so 120. If you want to write the whole thing, 6 cosine 120 plus I sine 120. Like that, okay? And we want rectangular form, so you've got to understand that rectangular form wants an x and a y. People that struggle with this lesson don't understand that. But I want x and y. And your formulas were x equals 6 cosine 120 and y equals 6 sine 120. So remember what I told you to do. I told you to split it up, okay? Sometimes you can just plug it in and just type in the whole thing, but sometimes that will lead to a confusing number. So I would split it up and just do cosine 120. So cosine 120 is negative 0.5, okay? Negative 0.5, negative 1/2, either way you want to think about it. Negative 1/2, okay? And then I want sine 120. Sine 120 is that messed up looking decimal number, okay? But that looks familiar, right? Is that in your list of numbers? 0.866 was which one? Square root of 3 over 2, okay? So Math Excel is going to force you into a square root. So square root of 3 over 2. And that's probably what you want. We can clean this up. We can reduce. 2 goes into 6 3 times, so that's negative 3. And 2 goes into 6 3 times, so you've got 3 square root of 3. And so you might look at it like this, negative 3 plus 3 square root of 3i. But generally when you write it, they want the I in front of the square root. So you're probably going to see it written like negative 3 plus 3i square root of 3. Number 5, I'm going to change that 120 into a 150. Change 120 into 150 makes the problem a little bit easier to deal with, okay? In order to do this, really, you have to change it to rectangular. That's what you want to do, okay? So I'm going to change to rectangular. And let's do x plus yi for each of these. So x, if you memorize something, memorize cosine goes with x. We'd have 4 cosine 30 plus 4 sine 30 with an I on it. That's what it's going to look like, right? And then over here, we're going to have 6 cosine 1. Uh-oh. What did I do? We're going to have 6 cosine 150 plus 6 sine 150 with an I on it. Okay? So I would highly recommend you do just the trig part. Cosine 30 is that 0.866 number. We've seen that before, right? 0.866. So we got 4 times that 0.866 number, but that was square root of 3 over 2, right? And then sine 30 is 0.5. Okay, good. So that's 1/2. And then over here, let's do 6 cosine 150. So cosine 150, cosine 150. There's that 0.866 number again. So negative square root of 3 over 2. And 6 sine 150 with an I on it. So we want sine 150. Sine 150 is 0.5. Okay, great. 0.5 is 1/2. Let's clean up. 2 goes into 4 twice. 2 goes into 4 twice. So I say 2 square root of 3 plus 2i. 2 goes into 6 3 times, so that's negative 3 square root of 3. Okay, 2 goes into 6 3 times, so that's going to be plus 3i. So remember, we're adding like terms, right? We're trying to add these things. So I see 2 square root of 3 plus negative 3 square root of 3 is negative square root of 3. And 2i and 3i make 5i. Now, we could convert this back to polar form if we wanted to. Actually, I'm going to do that real quick. Okay, if I wanted to put it back in polar, I've got an x and a y. I need an r and a theta. You know what? I'll leave that for later. Let's just leave it at this. Okay? That's pretty good.